I want to welcome you all to our final Graduate Group in Education Ph.D. Colloquium Series seminar. Most of you know me. Oh, okay, I'm recording. My name is Danny C. Martinez, Associate Professor in Language, Literacy, and Culture, and Chair of the Graduate Group in Education. I get a reminder that I forget to introduce myself sometimes, so that's for the recording. But I wanted to first introduce Gloria Rodriguez, who is now a full professor in our School of Education, a celebration definitely, who will introduce our speaker, soon to be Doctora Yanira Madrigal-Garcia. So passing it over to you, Gloria.
Thank you, Danny. It's really always such a pleasure to be able to present Yanira Madrigal-Garcia. I think that I just, I have so much to say, so I'm going to keep my remarks really brief and draw on things that I've been able to have the opportunity to say about her for other forums, because I think it's a way of maybe setting the stage for what we're about to hear. One of the things that I've always, been proud of with Yanira is that she took on the challenge coming to our School of Education of actually completing 2 areas of emphasis. So she's one of very few students who has completed both the language literacy and culture emphasis area work, as well as the school organization and educational policy area work. So with that powerful combination of preparation and coursework and all that, she also has always been just fearless in terms of pursuing her work and to build on the work that she did when she was completing her master's work under the auspices of San Jose State's Mexican American Studies program with an emphasis in education. And so she continued to build from that work, and her knowledge has just, expanded so significantly. So I'm going to just share a few things that I feel, kind of say it succinctly for folks to know who it is that we're about to hear. Yanira was awarded early on in her career here at the School of Ed, the UC Mexis CONACYT Fellowship, which is co-sponsored by the Mexican government to provide multiple years of funding support for graduate students who are eligible for dual citizenship and whose research endeavors bear significant relevance for the mobility of Mexican origin populations in the United States. This opportunity has led to Yanira further distinguishing herself as a new scholar with the potential to produce work that will likely gain international recognition. Her potential is further indicated by her research activities focused on the impact of community violence on educators' practices in Mexico, and also the opportunity that she had for scholarly mentoring opportunities in Spain, interacting with international scholars who conduct applied critical theory research in the social sciences and humanities. Speaking to the strengths of her particular dissertation work, I view her research as innovative on at least 2 fronts. First, in theorizing violence in a manner that allows us to interrogate how schools are implicated in the impact of violence on youth's educational aspirations. And second, in investigating through engaging directly with youth, how their educational aspirations are shaped by the surrounding conditions in which they seek to live, study, and develop. So with that, I would like to introduce and welcome Yanira Madrigal-Garcia.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I guess I'm so honored to be here today. I want to thank each of you for carving out the time to be here. I'm joining in from Ohlone land, also known as Hayward, California, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we occupy and consider how we might stand in solidarity with First Nations and Indigenous people. The artwork that you see here titled, "They Tried to Bury Us, They Didn't Know We Were Seeds," uses an Indigenous image to represent the strength and resilience of our Indigenous ancestors. It illustrates how critical it is to engage in decolonial work that refers to rehumanization and centering education as a site of contestation and transformation. It also represents the experiences of vulnerable young people who are racialized and discriminated, yet prove time and again to be resourceful, hopeful, and brilliant. I'm not here to speak for these young people, teachers, and school leader allies. Instead, I am here as a conduit of this work to demonstrate what they have taught me. The color scheme in this PowerPoint represents the legacy of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. These were overlapping communities of resistance that connected their struggles. One pivotal moment of this resistance included the Third World Liberation Front movement that later became known as ethnic studies and erupted via student activism, and that sent ripple effects nationwide. I am here because we are. This is Ubuntu philosophy that highlights how our relationships with others shape our sense of self. The support, guidance, and love of so many is why I stand here today. First, I want to thank the young people, teachers, and school leaders at both school sites where I conducted my study, who gave me permission to listen and witness. Their desire for justice and commitment to create schools that genuinely serve the needs of young people and their community is central to this work. I want to thank the UC Davis School of Education, in particular, those of you who are eager to support, mentor, and guide me. Thank you, Christian Faltes, Danny Martinez, McCall Kurlander, for getting excited about my work. Marcos Pizarro and Magdalena Barrera, you have mentored me as a master's student and continue to do so. I feel so grateful that you allowed me to find my scholarly voice and continue to care for me and offer kind reminders of the importance of my work. Thank you, fierce women of color scholars, Nancy Acevedo Gill, Patricia Quijada, Julie Figueroa, Marcela Cuellar, Katy de los Rios, for showing me how this work with grace, strength, and compassion, but centered on decolonization and abolition. A very special thank you to Gloria Rodriguez, who as my dissertation chair has supported me from day one and who has been instrumental to my intellectual development. Thank you for guiding me through this process, for being kind, generous, and steadfast in my corner. Moreover, I want to thank my family, my friends, for showing me the true meaning of hard work, justice, and equity. My sister scholars for their unconditional love, my partner Gustavo, who I love, respect, and who I am honored to share my life with. Lastly, my children, Nekali and Samantha, who have taught me the true meaning of joy, dreams, and justice. I will share the impetus for this work, research design, and findings. I'll start with my migration story. So Juan Gonzalez explains that the Latino presence in the US is the harvest of the empire, of the result of more than a century of domination. Before he was 18 years, my father fled his home in El Salvador when the Civil War intensified due to US direct involvement. He immigrated to Guatemala and then to Mexico, where he met my mother. She grew up in a small rural pueblo, Santa Fe del Rio, Michoacan. Her parents were third-generation farmers. My parents were a young couple with small children during economic recession in Mexico, which drove my father to cross a border for the third time without his family, to work and send remittances. It was 1990 when my family immigrated together to the US and began to reside in Oakland. This experiential knowledge of transnational migration informs the worldview that I bring and helps me ground my research and my teaching. Members of my family in Mexico and El Salvador who are K-12 teachers, organizers, and community workers have dedicated their lives to serve diverse populations facing social and economic marginalization. Each person here has an important story. I will only highlight the work of my Tia Mari, my maternal aunt who is a nun and who has worked in poor and rural populations in Oaxaca and in the border town of Tecate. At the heart of this work is my tia's commitment to what Tomlinson and Lipset describe as an accompaniment, or making connections with others, finding common ground, and uniting around the concerns, interests, and ideas of people with the greatest need for profound social changes. My family's emancipatory commitments influence my pathway to work on the ground and serve the community. For over 15 years, I worked and continue to work as an emancipatory community worker alongside community organizations and schools. I want to highlight my work with the RISE Agency, the Community School Partnership, by centering family assets and using culturally sustaining approaches. The RISE team supports young people to obtain a high school degree and continue on to a post-secondary education. In this role, I witnessed the success of the RISE Agency, but also a schooling system that continually dehumanizes working class young people of color through criminalization and punitive discipline. My engagement allowed me to see that families care deeply about their education, school, and community. They are critical of unequal conditions and actively challenge them. This disconnection prompted me to attend graduate school to understand the structures and processes that shape educational disparities and that inflict harm and violence on students. The following provides a more detailed specifics about the research design. So as an emancipatory community worker, I engaged in this work with the understanding that oppressive conditions did not emerge overnight. There is a legacy of racism, exclusion, and dehumanization that has shaped the experiences of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color in the United States. Various policies and practices initiated prior to the institutionalization of schooling function to resist literacy and control the minds and bodies of BIPOC communities. It is also my understanding that the underlying purpose of schooling has been the subjugation and repression of non-Western knowledges and people. I work from this position. I work from the position that schooling was never meant to be a neutral project. As a project of coloniality, schooling has been and continues to be violent. I'm weaving in several bodies of literature that explore the symbolic constructions of the urban and that examine the difficult social and material conditions in urban settings. Scholars of color in particular have helped us challenge deficit works that blame BIPOC populations for systemic inequalities they experience. In particular, Tuck explains that the urban has been a coded way to talk about race or working class people of color. Fine and Ruglis detail that naming the urban is to bring forth the historical construction of oppressive forces that function to deteriorate. The urban refers to a nexus of material conditions and experiential realities. Further, these authors detail that the urban solidifies a racialized relationship wherein whites benefit from an ongoing dispossession of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. In other words, according to Patterson, urban spaces of privilege construct urban spaces of oppression. In the current era of privatization of public education, along with school choice, the reputation or labels assigned to a school can serve to pool or deter families, resources, and support. In theory, school choice gives parents, no matter their racial and/or socioeconomic status, the option to choose the school they want for their children. In working class urban communities of color, however, school choice has limitations given schools have been constructed as underperforming and undesirable in light of high stakes testing. There's fierce competition in urban school settings for families to obtain the limited spots and desired, quote, high performing schools, where Patillo argues schools are essentially choosing the students. Labels that designate a school as high or low performing can mean little when attempting to understand the types of experiences that urban young people and teachers share on campus. It's critical to explore the meaning of school reputation, the experiences connected to school reputation, but also what are the implications for young people, teachers, and school leaders? This brings me to, so the first is, how does the reputation of two mirror opposite high schools shape the culture at each site? What are the implications for the worth attributed to students, teachers, and the resources allocated to the school? And third, How do youth, teachers, and school leaders mediate colonial schooling? In education, coloniality makes explicit how racialized ideologies are embedded in the social fabric of schooling that harms BIPOC young people, and how only those who align with white and middle class norms are designated as worthy and deserving. Coloniality is made up of coloniality of power that reinvents colonial systems in contemporary social arrangements that privilege and oppress. Coloniality of knowledge that refers to the production and distribution of Western and white Anglo-Saxon Protestant ideology and knowledge. And coloniality of being that creates people who are problems and frames them as disposable. Even with the power of colonial schooling, a culturally sustaining approach offers tools to uncover and interrupt its inner workings. It also fosters a school culture that is collaborative, respectful, and built on the wealth of students and communities. Decolonization is a movement that shapes and gives substance to history. It alters ways of being and allows for the transformation of those who have been deemed illegitimate and marginal to become privileged actors. A decolonial frame reveals how youth resistance offers an avenue for young people who experience marginality to take charge of disrupting oppressive policies, practices, and discourses through self-reflection, critical consciousness, speaking out, as well as engaging in grassroots organizing to create change. As a critical researcher, I foreground how unequal power dynamics surface in the very essence of schools and distorts what is claimed as valuable and worthy. I recognize that every aspect of this work is inherently political. This work emerges from oppressive social inequities as a way to participate and work towards racial justice, which refers to positive outcomes for populations that experience these oppressive realities. Chicana feminist epistemology in particular enables me as a Chicana and scholar of color to embody the tensions that accompany working with communities that mirror my own home community in a humanizing way, where I make a commitment to truly listen. Monte Caoba is a space that is representative of the difficult conditions and realities in urban communities, both historically and present day. As you can see, the two high schools at the heart of this inquiry seem to contrast each other. Oder High is a Title I school with student enrollment over 800 and with a majority of Latinx and Black students, but nevertheless diverse and where 90% qualify for free or reduced price lunch. Logro High student population is more than double that of Poder. The largest student population is at 31% and are Black, while the second largest at 24% are white. It is also a diverse school, but less than 50% qualify for free or reduced price lunch. Early interactions informed my work, in particular my interest in understanding how young people, teachers, and other actors made meaning of school reputation, along with the implications for worth and deservingness. There were multiple data sources that were part of this research that included field notes, audio and video recordings, photos, semi-structured interviews, and 2 rounds of photo voice interviews. This graph offers a more detailed breakdown of the participants who were interviewed. There were 2 stages of analysis that included a within case analysis that explored each case as a comprehensive unit. Once that analysis of each case was complete, the second stage of cross-case analysis began. The first stage of analysis utilized a combination of inductive and deductive approaches. The second stage of cross-analysis used solely inductive approaches. The lessons across sites emerge from the lived experience and power structures at play. First, Logro emerged as a privileged space that oppresses. Second, poder emerges as a systematically oppressed space that dehumanizes. Third, the ways that colonial schooling emerged as oppressive discourses, racialized perceptions, punitive and biased practices, unequal distribution of resources, and assault. Fourth, the criticality or critical consciousness that youth and justice-oriented teachers and school leaders have that drives them towards resistance, organizing to transform colonial schooling. Student at Logro shared that they liked their school and that the school places great emphasis on academics. As discussed by Ernesto, a Latinx senior, I want to say that compared to all of the schools in Monte Caoba, I say we are the best public school. I have a lot of friends who go to different schools. They don't have the resources that we have. We have more AP classes and more honors classes. My neighbor went to Harper High. She told me, ugh, my calculus teacher wasn't that good. She got a C in the class. She didn't do that well on the AP test. I knew some people here, they weren't geniuses, but got good AP scores. Some schools are not getting as many opportunities. Some of the students that go here usually go here because they don't want to go to other schools because of what they've heard. Although Logro has the necessary resources to provide, as shared by some students, quote, a good education, Ernesto discusses that this is not the case for all schools in Monte Caoba. There are some schools that are not coveted based on rumors about low performance. Part of what surfaced in this research is that the student population at Logro has changed. While it continues to be diverse, over the decade preceding the study, close to 1/2 of the Black student population decreased, while the white student population increased threefold. Even though students feel positively about Logro, narratives of students and teachers establish that students part of the highly selective Design and Architecture Academy and the Language and Social Science program that are disproportionately white engage in oppressive discourses. In her narrative, Fuchsia, an African-American junior who is not part of DAA or LSS, explained, I've known kids who say they went here just to be in Design and Architecture and the LSS program, the two best programs at the school. Whatever. It's like, I feel it's really discouraging, like self-discouraging for students because they're saying, oh yeah, if you're not in LSS, you're not smart. I've heard so many kids that say that around school. You don't know how other classes run. It's like this beef between kids not in LSS and kids who are in LSS. It's an unspoken thing. It's like LSS students, they have a thing. Oh yeah, you're so better than everyone because you're in this one program. Dude, that's not the case. BIPOC students were conscious and critical of systemic forces that privileged a disproportionate number of white students at Logro. Fuchsia's sarcastic tone at the end of the quote not only demonstrates her agency and willingness to respond to students communicating oppressive discourses. In the broader school context, beyond the prestigious programs that Fuchsia describes, Genevieve, a Chicana junior, explained, well, it's a big school, and as a minority in the school, you don't really feel welcome. There's not a lot of activities for you to be involved with. Other people would just see it as, oh, it's comfortable because their culture is being shown in the school. But for us minorities, it's like we're being hidden. We're in the shadows and we don't know what to do. Although in this excerpt, Genevieve details feeling uncertain about what to do, she worked collaboratively with other Latinx students that year to organize an assembly to celebrate Latinx heritage. The goals of the assembly shared by the Raza Student Union president were to make visible the presence and legitimacy of Latinx students in Logro High, but also broadly the US, given the historical and present day racialization. The images on this slide were projected during the Latinx Heritage Assembly during a poem reading. I have only shared a slice of findings at Logro. In the interest of time, I will now share the comparison of poder. During the 2014-2015 school year, the MCUSD announced that Poder High was a concentrated assistance school. This means that after years of not meeting state standards, it needed to be redesigned, quote. The district put out a call to see who had a design for Poder. Teachers' narratives shared that this sounded like school closure and an invitation for charter schools to come in. Hidden under the guise of schooling accountability, school closures have been found to have a negative impact on student performance, but also create hardships for communities struggling with disinvestment. This became the catalyst for students, but also parents, to engage in grassroots organizing as resistance. These efforts brought the redesign plans to a stop. During an open forum with district officials, Poder students and parents demanded the district to support them and not engage in efforts that would create more instability or that would tear their school apart. The students and parents were looking for leadership that reflected their values of advocacy, care, and equity. Poder's principal and alumni during the 2014-2015 school year was working to build close-knit and academic culture. He was not allowed to return for the 2015-2016 school year. The incoming principal was a school leader who came out of retirement, who was hired 2 weeks before the start of the school year. The community coordinator at Poder shared how the student activism was understood by district leaders as something instigated by Ms. Perez, a Chicana and Poder alumni working as a community coordinator. In particular, she shared, I was summoned into a meeting last year about student activism because students were fighting a charter takeover. I was told that students at Poder High didn't have the language or critical thinking skills to be putting on these efforts of activism. So I was accused of instigating everything from feeding students, everything from language to what to fight for. The students at Logro High, white students in particular, would never be perceived in this way. This offers a clear example of the racialization that BIPOC students at Poder experienced, which assumes BIPOC young people are not believed to be capable of voicing demands toward a more stable and supportive school. The artifact on this slide is a flyer that circulated in the community for a February 2016 community meeting to continue the efforts from the previous year to fight a possible charter takeover. Organizers that included parents used a message that does not place blame on parents or students, but instead holds the district accountable for, quote, failing the students. During a launching staff meeting in the 2015-2016 school year, the incoming leadership conducted a workshop on youth gangs and gang violence, as well as information on what to look out for to identify these issues. For teachers and other staff at Poder who had been there for more than a year, this information was not reflective of the student population that they served. During fall 2015, it was third period, and I remember that Ms. Younger, an African-American teacher who I would visit regularly, was in her prep period. After asking her how her day was going, she shared, it's busy. Students are being suspended for willful defiance, something they should not be doing because MCUSD has a policy against that. So students are being suspended and this is not being documented. The short administrator, she explained, he is going about his position the wrong way because he is under the impression that he was sent here to clean things up. Some of the questions that emerged include, how are school leaders disrupting deficit and invisibilized school structures? Ms. Llamas, a Pinoy teacher, learned about funding available for therapists that Poder could not access. This, she believes, was the result of fighting the charter takeover and other demands for much needed support and desired stability. The above excerpt highlights the different levels of systematic disparities that exist and how it connects to ideas of worth and who deserves support. Although district leaders know that Poder has the second largest population of students identified as newcomer, who are coming to school with distressing trauma from experiences in their home country and during migration to the US, it seems this was not considered when distributing resources for therapists. Instead, what emerged as pivotal is a sense of Poder needs to be punished for opening your mouth. The racialized perceptions of district leaders and school leadership that intensified during the 2015-2016 school year was also experienced as control and punitive assault by SROs in the school. Susie, a Latina junior, rationalizes that SROs are present in her school because there are unsafe or violent crime in the community that surrounds the school. However, she believes that SROs abuse their power, which then violates the rights of the young people at Poder. She explains, we live in a community where unsafe things can happen. So I guess the SROs are here to do their job. I don't think there is anything wrong with that, but hopefully they don't abuse their power. At the same time, we are students who get our rights taken away. I feel like they overdo their power. I mean, I understand that they are working. At the same time, we all have equal rights. I feel like sometimes they do overdo their power. There were multiple incidences of abuse of power during the 2014-2015 school year. A security officer placed a student on a chokehold. The following year, the two SROs shoved a student who was called to come down to the office. This second incident drove the students to walk out in 2016 to demand a change in the system. Quote, I'm going to share a snippet of audio, and this is Jessica. She's a Chicana youth leader who was a sophomore that year on the day of the protest, and offered an overview of what was happening. She discussed the catalyst that sparked this walkout and what they wanted to come out of these efforts. In this short overview, Jessica demonstrates a strong grounding by affirming her right and that of her peers to speak up and challenge dehumanization. Dehumanization manifests as demeaning school practices that inflict emotional and physical harm on young people. Overall, the message that Jessica and other student leaders convey, it's not just that this is wrong, but more so that there are structural forces at play that shape oppressive conditions and allow them to happen again and again and again. The tone that Jessica offers is one of urgency to remedy what is happening. In particular, the students say time and again, we want a change in the system. This is referring to big picture change in leadership, both at the school and district levels, but also tools to aid in the day-to-day, like mandatory training for personnel.
The system. And already I had rumors talking about how they're coming, they're calling the superintendent, and he's also advised to get every student like to their classes, right? But we can't do that because this is our First Amendment right, and we got the right to protest, and we right here just want something, right? Because we want all of this to change. We want the system to change. It can't continue going like this because 2 or 3 weeks ago there was like a newcomer, right? He got called down to the office, and then he had some dialogue with somebody in the office, right? And then look, because in the video there's no audio, right? It looks like he had some dialogue, and it looked like he was trying to baffle a work situation. And that's when one of the SSOs aggravates him, right? He pushes him, and then that's what you can see. And then they're like car symbols and those, and then and then you can't really tell much because they go behind the wall that's at the corner, and all you can see is the elbows going back and forth, right? And so we're like, this is happening again to the point where the shooting was they went to a hospital, they were picked up by paramedics, right? And yes, it was later known that the student was intoxicated, but that gives them no right or no reason whatsoever to act such a way, right? And so that's what we want to change, because if we can't have that, then one of our alternatives that we've been talking about is have trainings mandatory for all the personnel.
This dissertation project provides ethnographic knowledge of how young people and teachers experience urban schooling by comparing their experiences at two schools with mirror opposite reputations. First, this dissertation hones in on how labels, in other words, school reputations, can shape the type of worth that young people and teachers attribute to themselves, their school, and their community. Second, the dissertation offers an entry to understand how young people of color and teacher allies resist colonial schooling practices and policies that dehumanize and criminalize. Finally, this study contributes to growing empirical work that maps the types of experiences that young people of color have in urban schools and the agency and resolve that young people to demand schooling to be responsive to their needs, desires, and strengths. The theoretical point of departure for this work is coloniality, which refers to a violent takeover of land and people and the establishment of systems to uphold white supremacy. Coloniality emerges in everyday experiences that deny the full humanity of young people because of the color of their skin, gender, social class, the school they attend, and the community where they reside, among other factors. If we are going to address what it takes to decolonize schooling, we first need to be very clear about what the sources of oppression are within a schooling context. By oppression, I mean a system where we see dominant subordinate positioning. Two questions to consider connected to theory include, what are the colonial conditions that create oppressive realities for some students and at the same time excessive privileges for others? Second, what aspects of schooling functions as obstacles to the well-being of young people and educators? In terms of practice, this work has taught me that educators cannot just aspire to be good teachers and opt to take a neutral stance. It is essential to grapple with how historical patterns of coloniality manifest in school spaces. Teachers and school practitioners should be committed to challenging racism. As Goldie Mohammed reminds us, it is a civil right, human right, to teach in response to what our students need, and we have not been doing that. 3 questions to consider connected to practice include, what are the assumptions that educators hold about students, families, and the communities that they serve? How can educators build on the assets and wealth of students, teachers, and the overall community? How can we center humanizing approaches and practices to curb the harm that young people and teachers experience in these colonial realities? In terms of policy, this research demonstrates various moving parts, which can make it challenging to foster decolonizing spaces in the classroom and the broader school context. A priority is for district and school leaders to implement systems that facilitate collaborative work. Teachers and school leaders should not feel like Mr. Martinez describes. They are being thrown all over the place by the constantly changing mandates that the district puts out. There were so many assets and wealth in both communities. So how can we as educators build on that? How are school leaders working to foster partnerships with young people and families? But more so, how can schools and districts be more accountable to the community that they serve? Gracias, thank you.
Thank you, Yanira, for your presentation. It's great to see this work after following it through the years. I want to open it up now for questions from folks in our audience, our virtual audience. Please unmute if you have a question and you can go ahead and ask. Go ahead, Julie, Doctora Figueroa, go ahead.
Hey, Yanira, thank you so much for your work. You know, I'm always really inspired by the way you facet your work together, because it feels like you're elevating and challenging yourself to make sure that whatever approaches you take to understanding youth and their living conditions, that you always center their sense of humanity. And so I feel like, you know, have you ever, I guess I'd like to know from you, how do you, what anchors you to, I mean, it's not just a small piece of work. I mean, I'm always like, I'm thinking about your conceptual framework, your theories. I mean, it's a lot of brain power happening here. So can you just share a little bit of like your approach to, you know, how is it that you kept building and crafting and to make sure that you really had a responsible approach to work, to really thinking about youth? Thank you so much.
I mean, I guess what anchors me is my experience, just my trajectory as a first generation woman of color. And I think that that's a big part of it. My family's experience, having gone through, you know, Civil War as an impetus to leave their home, right? That's what my father did. But also just, I feel inspired. I feel inspired by what I learn, right? So I wanna really honor those lessons that other folks have given me so generously. So that's one of the things that I feel anchors me as well. But also, lastly, just to answer that, is patience. This work didn't happen overnight, and it would have looked very differently if I would have just said, "Oh, okay, let me just finish, put an end to this." I think that I'm really interested and passionate about moving the work forward. And that's what keeps pushing me.
Other questions? Oh, go ahead, Bernadette. Dr. Best-Green.
Thank you. I am just so proud and just excited. My heart is happy for you as you just share this work and birth this masterpiece. I feel like it has just grown, and I echo what Dr. Figueroa just said. What I would love to do is ask you to share a little kind of snapshot of your vision for the applications of this work. I feel like I could see so many really meaningful applications, but I'm curious to know where you see the legs of this walking. What's your desired wish list? Where will your impact be made first? I'm just really excited to learn more about where you see this going.
So I think one of the ways that I see this applied is I've been grappling with this idea of racial literacy and what it means for educators, right? So I think that that should be something that it's central to our work with teachers, right? Teacher educators, because it's important to understand that we need to apply an anti-racist lens. That's what we've been listening to right recently, anti-racist. But I would call it to decolonial, right? A decolonial lenses to the work that we're doing in schools today. So I feel that that's a big part of what we need to be doing to develop these literacies for our teachers. But also, I guess the other piece that I want to mention is how important our communities are, right? So, and we hear community involvement, family involvement, and in actuality, it's a struggle. It's a struggle for families to be in the schools. It's a struggle for them to be heard and really truly served. So I think part of it is really attempting to reorient how we do this thing called school and how we are building these bridges with our communities and really truly honoring what they bring. So I think that that would be the other big piece, that the other major application immediate that I want to kind of pursue.
Okay, I want to thank Yanira for your presentation, for folks for joining us today. This work is going to be important. Gave me flashbacks when you mentioned cleaning up the schools, and there's so much there, you know, so much to that statement of cleaning up schools. And if you think about the colonial practices and how cleaning up schools oftentimes means using kids as labor at the same time, to literally clean up the school because of these practices. So much to think about, Yanira. I want to thank you for your work. I look forward to your work being out in the world, and I want to congratulate you, and hopefully we can have many celebrations very soon as you officially become Doctora Madrigal-Garcia.